With the BBC facing an existential crisis, with Donald Trump still threatening to sue the BBC for $1 billion. Sorry, $5 billion. Between $1 and $5 billion. I want $6 trillion and Claudia Winkleman's hair. That's more intimidation than litigation. I guess he expects the BBC to fold like a piece of used bog roll, like CNN, CBS and ABC did. But the BBC won't settle, because it's our money. They can't, so they might go all the way. The BBC might very well win, but there'll be no BBC left by the time it does. The BBC definitely were right to give the fat, adjudicated rapist fuck-in-chief an apology, because that Panorama edit, it wasn't just dishonest, it was demented. An example of indefensibly hack journalism, and so unnecessary, because the lie they told was so close to the truth. The President of the United States told the American public on multiple occasions that the legitimacy of the US election could not be trusted, and a riot ensued. Understandably. Jesus, if I genuinely believed an election was stolen in the UK, I hope we'd storm Parliament. But, you know, in a more British, maybe a sit-in, or an online petition. But even if you think the BBC is a left-wing, woke, socialist, paedophile ring, or a right-wing, Tory-infiltrated, genocide apologist paedophile ring, fine, I respect your opinion, I truly do, but you have to look at the people with money and clout who are now laser-focused on ending the BBC once and for all, and ask yourself why. Because of a lazy-ass 10-second edit in an hour-long programme? I think not. Liz Truss, Suella Braverman, Boris Johnson, people who know a thing or two about losing the trust of the great British public, who want the licence fee payer to line Donald Trump's pockets. The Telegraph, the Mail, Rees-Mogg and Lee Anderson, both on the payroll at GB News. Just a coincidence, I imagine. And of course, Nigel Farage, promising to essentially abolish the BBC as we know it if he wins the next election, which now seems all but inevitable. At least he's being open about it, I guess. But why now? Because now he has the backing of Donald Trump, a man who has destroyed public service broadcast in the US, and Elon Musk, the guy who pays Tommy Robinson's legal fees. Elon Musk's Twitter AI system Grok now saying, and I quote, defunding the BBC would end the mandatory subsidy for biased content, letting viewers choose truly impartial sources like GB News. I'm not fucking joking. And so it came to pass that GB News got the first question in the White House briefing room last week, along with an exclusive interview with the President himself, where he was asked many questions about the BBC and none at all about Jeffrey Epstein. Just the way he likes his impartial news, with reporters that salute him as his motorcade goes by. And quite right too, with an ethically dubious nightly current affairs show hosted by our next Prime Minister Nigel Farage, waffling unchallenged nonsense 3 times a week into the homes of people who like listening to Nigel Farage waffling unchallenged nonsense into their homes 3 times a week. The most powerful man in the world, along with the world's richest man, along with the UK's most sinister man, attempting to destroy the BBC and elevate GB News to the status of national broadcaster. Even if you hate the BBC, even if you love GB News, or you list your hobbies as liking flags and shouting at hotels, you must surely see that this attack on the BBC represents a wider attack on our journalistic sovereignty, our culture, and our reputation abroad, right? You go to a tribe in the rainforest and say you're from the UK, they'll say 2 things: Princess Diana and the BBC World Service, and maybe Greg's the baker, right? But love it or loathe it, the BBC is an incredible ambassador for British values across the globe. And yes, I know the BBC has harboured a few paedophiles and let Greg Wallace on the telly, and allowed a sex offender who likes taking pictures of his own arse to announce the death of the Queen, but the BBC is not owned by big tech bros or multi-billionaires, or in GB News' case, a hedge fund manager. It's owned by the taxpayer, which means you can can hold the BBC to account when it fucks up, which it does on a far too regular basis, in a way that you can't when it's owned by the foreign billionaires that own the paper that you read and choose which AI slop and lies you scroll through. At least the entirety of its on-screen talent isn't made up of ex-Conservative MPs, ageing hacks and dead-eyed free speech warrior bum-faced piss drinkers shouting cultural Marxism at anything that moves, and you haven't got the Chancellor of the Exchequer hosting fucking Question Time every fucking week. My God, she'd be fucking awful at that, wouldn't she? You know, say what you like about Fiona Bruce, but at least she isn't Rachel Reeves. All I'm saying is, if you want the BBC gone, fine, I get it. But not like this. Don't base your opinion on what Grok and the owners of GB News and Liz Truss and a far-right promoting almost trillionaire have to say when it comes to free, fair and impartial news organisations. Just saying. Yeah. So the BBC still waiting to hear from the President's lawyers. It's been a tough week for the corporation.